Hello, me again. And it's not the last time. Another talk about Lambda 2. And this one, well, those are the names of the ones who did write the slides. At the end, you will see the list of all the ones that did contribute. So, there are lots of text in the slide. Don't try to read it. You won't have the time. So, what is Lambda 2 and why did we do that? So, it's a new middle end, an optimizing middle end for OCaml. So that means that it's something that comes after type checking, front end, parsing, desugaring. And we have a language that is kind of untyped. We translate it to Lambda 2, which is a new IR on which we work. And then we leave the IR to go to the backend to the architecture-specific optimizations. So, what does it replace? So it replaces the old middle end. So Clojure, which is the very old one by Xavier a long time ago, and Lambda 1, which we did a few years ago, and which had some limitations that we wanted to lift. So it's going to be to produce better code than Lambda 1, probably kind of as fast as Clojure, which is the reason why Clojure was kept in the compiler, because it was faster than Lambda 1. And both modes of fast and good are going to be compatible, which is not the case between Lambda 1 and Clojure right now. So at the beginning, it started as an experiment to extend Lambda 1, because, well, you know, optimizations are never finished. And then we noticed some limitation. We changed a bit the IR, we changed a bit more. And then the experiment grew a bit too much. And then, well, basically, now no code from Lambda 1 is still in there. So that's a small teasing slide to show you some things that were not possible before and that are quite good now. Well, you could write that code, it just was not as good. So that code does things with some pattern matching, allocates a few things, and what we want to do here is to remove all the allocations, and we can do that now. That's the kind of changes that require to change the IR, because the transformations that we want to do to be able to remove the allocations were not representable in Lambda 1. And so that was not really possible with just incremental changes to do reliably. So it would have been possible in many cases to have something that is specific to some cases and transform them, but it wouldn't have been really reliable to be quite certain that there would never be allocation in something like that. So another teasing. So don't look at the assembly, that's just there to show the size, basically. So, of course, here no allocation too, but what you should look at is that the code is not that simple. It's called to a function that is recursive, that's modifying a reference outside. That's doing a lot of things that should allocate in some way, and it doesn't. And that's because there is some inlining, some other passes that detect a few things. So many small things that have to align properly for something like that to work. But we did that in a way that everything goes into the same path. And that's quite important because the dependencies between those optimizations is not obvious, which one has to go before the other. And that's the reason why we organized our transformation into a single big path that is doing all the optimization at the same time. That's a good example. Not everything is as good as that. And by the way, I wouldn't recommend to write it like that. I mean, this fold would be better, but that's just to demonstrate things, listfold would compile to the same code. So what kind of optimization do we do? So mainly at the beginning, the first one is inlining. So which is in itself kind of not an optimization. It's something that allows other optimization to work. And the big one that was not fully present in FLambda 1 is unboxing. Since now we directly target CMM, it's easier to unbox in our IR, and that was not really easy to represent in FLambda 1. And now we can unbox a lot of things like those variants before, and remove allocation in many situations. So also we can transform some dynamic allocation in static ones, do some CSC, do many things that the abstract domain tells us to do. Basically, that's kind of constant folding on steroids, and many small optimizations that triggers on some cases that are quite useful. But it's still the beginning. We will add many more later. So inlining. Inlining in itself is not an optimization, as I said, at least in modern processors, because inlining increases the cost size, and increasing the cost size is quite an heavy cost, because that consumes some memory bandwidth. And when you have large code bases like certain companies, the code size can probably consume most of the performance of your program. So FLambda 1 tended to be a bit too aggressive in inlining, and many optimization in FLambda 2 tries to make something as good without inlining by propagating more information. So we try to inline less, but still be as good as FLambda 1. But knowing when inlining is good is not something easy. So what we do is that we optimistically try to inline stuff, see whether optimization triggers, and if they don't trigger, basically inlining is useless, it will be costly. And instead, we go back to the old code. But if things trigger, then we can continue exploring and see if other inlining possibilities are good. So that was already the strategy from FLambda 1, but we tweaked it differently for the two. So the structure of the pass is basically 3 small passes. One that comes from the Lambda IR, one that goes to the CMM IR, and one that works on FLambda 2, and which we call simplify, and basically does all the useful transformation. There are some kind of useful transformation in the from and to passes, but they are mainly there for the fast mode, which disables the simplify pass. And I won't have time, so I won't speak about that. So that's the IR. Basically, all the IR, it's not missing any actual cases. So the code doesn't really look like that because we want abstraction in the type declaration, but it's actually that simple. There are just those cases that represent all the control flow, all the way to calls, or the way to define values. And that's basically kind of a principal design that we decided to take, is to reduce everything to just the minimum and handle quite correctly just those cases. So the reason for that is that if you have few cases and you handle them systematically, when you have many cases in the source language, you translate them basically the same way or to the same construction later, and if something works well on a case, it's going to work well on cases that does the same thing semantically, but is represented differently, which was not always the case before. So the style of the IR, you might not have time to see, but it's CPS style. But continuation are not like in SML, they are not first class. You can only use them to represent local control flow in functions. It's also a double barrel CPS, that is, we have two continuations all the time when we call functions. One continuation that represents a normal return, one continuation that represents the exceptional one, which gets compiled out when we go to CMM, but it's just there to track the control flow. It's also an ANF style. So both CPS and ANF style gives us a name for every control point and every value, which is quite useful to do some analysis later. So what do we do with this IR? Well, we optimize it in the simplifier, and so that's the path where we try to do as many things as possible. And the thing is that when you do everything at the same time, you get the result of some passes that are already the input of other passes. So you don't have to do a fixed point between different passes to get good results and have all the information you need to trigger other passes. So of course, that's more tricky to implement because, well, more things at the same time is more complex, but I think it was worth the trade-off. So yeah, it's structured in three parts. Basically, the main path. We have one part that go forward and propagate information. One part that does fixed point at the bottom of the expression, and one part that goes up and actually reconstructs the expression with all the things that were accumulated and transformed. So the forward pass, that's the smarter one in some way. It traverses the expression in the dominator tree way. It follows the control flow. Without actually building the dominator tree, it would be expensive, and it's simpler like that because we need to be able to do inlining at the same time. So we build the control flow and modify it while we actually traverse it to do abstract interpretation on the values that we know. So that's quite tricky, but we took some time to organize everything to work that well. But at the end, with the right abstraction, that's okay. The first version were quite spaghetti. So most of the values information are tracked with an abstract domain. Go see the talk yesterday. It should be on YouTube, I think. But alongside, we propagate a lot of dependencies information, some CAC properties like how were created some values that are not exactly the same thing as value informations. So that way, we know basically everything about the values, about some things about the control flow. But since we don't do fixed point in the abstract domain, so we don't do it because it would be too expensive, we still have to do something somewhere. So we need to accumulate enough information for those fixed points later. So another thing is that we want to do CSC on the expressions, but CPS style is not very convenient for CSC if you look at it usually. SSR form seems to be more convenient because everything that dominates the value is accessible. So to handle that, in fact, we have something that represents virtual phi points everywhere in our environment while we traverse the expression in the dominator order. Such that if we ever need actually those values, we will be able to propagate the variable through the control flow in the continuation while rebuilding the expression. So that's kind of SSA in CPS, but virtually only while looking at the expression. So while going down, we accumulate information about the value, but we also represent differently everything that we can transform later. So that's kind of a list of small transformations that we do that when they all combine produce something that works quite well. So at the bottom, we have some fixed point computations. And as you know, the fixed point happens before traversing. So if we discover anything while doing those fixed points, it won't be really useful for the abstract domain at that point. So what we mainly do at that point is only discovering information that are useful for rebuilding, but not so often useful for the abstract domain. That's mainly used for cleanup. But sometimes we do discover something wonderful that would completely change the code. And at that point, we notice sometimes that it's good enough to rerun the simplification on the current function. Not the whole file that f-lambda1 was doing, but just on the current function. We try to do that as rarely as possible, because that's quite expensive. And as I said, we don't want to run the passes multiple times. But well, sometimes you really need. And then at the end, when we have all the information, then we can rebuild everything. And rebuilding, well, we do perform the optimization that were accumulated before, but there are also a few optimizations that are specific to rebuilding and that we put there. Basically, it's usually simpler to write optimization while rebuilding rather than accumulating information for optimization, then doing them later. But so we try to avoid doing that when it's possible. And the only one that we put in that phase is the things that are not going to discover a new information. Like when you follow continuation twice, since our analysis is not going to lose information, it's not losing precision when following continuation. There's no point in tracking that in the domain, so it's okay to do that later and shortcutting continuations like that. So the thing is that having an abstract domain, modifying things, accumulating data can be quite expensive, and you don't want your compiler to be slow. So of course, we limit everything to simple algorithms that are not going to be quadratic. Usually, when we know the complexity, we want it to be n log n. But there are many other things that are just taking some time at various points that are just not algorithmically complex. And we basically have to track a lot of details. So it's okay when you spend a few years inside the OCaml compiler, you know all the tricks to optimize OCaml code. But that's not sufficient. Sometimes you also have to find exactly the right data structure that does exactly what you want, but not too much. And it took time for some of those to converge. But now I think we're quite good on that. So is it correct? Yeah, hopefully. We, as some didn't say, we only tested it, didn't prove it. But we did test it a lot. At least Genstreet did test it a lot, and enough apparently to push that in production. Sorry, Yaron, for losing your bet. Apparently, he did bet that there would be more bugs in f-lambda 2. I'm quite happy you lost. So if you followed the talk yesterday and maybe a bit during the ICFP also, you might know that Genstreet has a lot of internal language extensions. And we have to handle them because, well, we are compiling Genstreet code. And we are quite happy about that because we did have to extend f-lambda 2 in some ways to be able to handle those. But the extensions was quite easy. So I'm quite happy about the design because it kind of validates the fact that it was a good design, I think. So it's okay, it works well. You can test it, but it's not upstream. It's not going to be upstream soon. It's going to be a long work for that. And we don't have an OPAM repository just right now, but we probably will have soon. And thanks to everybody who did contribute, but I just realized before the talk that I forgot the current chair. So, questions?
Thanks very much, Pierre, for the great talk. We have time for one or two quick questions. I see one right here.
Thank you. At the beginning, you mentioned like examples of code that don't allocate.
Yeah.
Which is nice, but you rely entirely on the optimizer doing the right thing for that.
Yeah.
And it's a bit
How
brittle.
can you trust that?
Yeah. It's more like it's a bit brittle. I mean, relying entirely on the optimizer doing the right thing. Do you have a way to, make that less
but
brittle?
has some. But otherwise, well, there are unbox types for that. But but that's an optimization. I mean, it should apply everywhere. If it's an optimization, you shouldn't rely precisely on that. You can rely because there are ways to annotate, well, at least in JStreet extension, that some part of the code is not allocating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe one more very quick question while we try to get the remote speaker on.
Thank you. One question. So you said you're using double-barrel CPS, Kennedy style. What does the introduction of effect handlers, does that affect that somehow? How do they show up in your IR?
They are, for us, plainly C calls. We just don't see them. We don't expect to do any useful optimization with them right now. We probably might do something specific for that, maybe triple barrel CPS. But it's not exactly the same thing.
Okay, let's thank Pierre again.